I know that a lot of you have been waiting for my final Miss Universe recap, and don't worry, the time has come. I am here to spill the tea, or the coffee rather. And I cannot wait to literally just sit down and have this conversation with y'all. As you can see, I am back in the Philippines, so it took me a couple of days to just gather my idea, feelings, emotions, and all of those things together. And I decided to just sit down and spill it out for all of you guys. Now, before we start, I just want to say something. These are my opinions and most importantly, my personal experience in Mexico covering Miss Universe this year. And what I mean by that is that you're entitled to feel differently if you were there or not. We definitely did not have the same experience, and I respect your opinion just like I expect you to respect mine. So having established that, I hope that you guys find some sort of value, entertainment, and also some sort of enlightenment in this particular video. If you do, don't forget to drop a like, comment, subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it, right? Okay, here we go. You know, I have to start from the very beginning. The moment that we found out that Miss Universe was gonna be held in Mexico, I had so many hopes and expectations for Miss Universe. And I will take you back to where I was mentally when that happened. Last year, Miss Universe in El Salvador. That was my very first time covering Miss Universe in person, and I am going to tell you that was one of the best experiences of my life. Granted, Miss Universe in El Salvador was heavily supported by the national government in El Salvador. They injected $50 million into the organization and recovered the investment with the incredible numbers, overall $250 million profit in terms of tourism and added value to the country's economy. Still last year, if you guys remember, Paula Sugar announced during the finals that she was no longer going to be the president of Miss Universe, and very shortly after came the announcement that Raul Rocha was now a co-owner of Miss Universe. Now, when you start attaching the dots, you know, we have this new person with so much money and so much power within the organization who is offering to bring Miss Universe to Mexico, his home country, where he has his businesses, and we would assume he has so many connections. Personally, I assumed this is gonna be the best edition of the pageant ever. I mean, just it's the perfect place. Mexico is such a beautiful country. The culture, the history, the food, the people, mwah. It's just one of the cultural capitals of the world, and the girls are gonna have a great time. The show is gonna be great, and what could possibly go wrong? Boy, when I tell you I was wrong as they come. But also, if I'm gonna be honest and objective, not everything was bad. One of the things that a lot of people want me to talk about is the production of the show. I mean, we cannot talk about the production without going a little bit before finals. Let's talk about prelims. I am a huge Miss Universe fan. Whenever I had the opportunity to go to anything Miss Universe related, whether it is at an international competition or just a local, national, whatever it is, I love it. In fairness, I was a little bit jet lagged when I attended the preliminary competition of Miss Universe, and for some reason, I kept on falling asleep all throughout the show. Now, I don't want to say that the show was boring, but it was a little bit long. It was a little bit stretched. My experience watching the show in person was definitely not the same experience as someone who is watching it from home. The moment that the preliminary competition ended, I heard so many complaints online about, first of all, the camera angles, the stage, the LED lights, the screens, everything pretty much. And a lot of people arguably also had a big problem with the format. Remember that for the preliminary competition, we had the national costume competition, which was being scored, followed by the swimsuit round, which was also being scored, and ultimately the evening gown competition that wasn't so clear on whether or not it was being scored. Now, look, I don't really have a problem with having all three segments together in one show, as it's something that has happened before. It is nothing new in the world of pageantry. However, when you add 125 candidates to the mix, I have to be honest and tell you that the show was becoming a little bit too long and too boring for me. I remember, and those who were with me there in person, I kept repeatedly falling asleep during the show. And this is not to say and be dramatic and be like exaggerating and telling you that it was so boring. I was truly very jet lagged. But whenever I attend one of these events, I am usually so excited, so happy to be there that regardless if I just travel for a whole week, trust me, I will be happy to be there. The show was a little bit too slow paced, in my opinion. And I think this is one of the reasons why Miss Universe tried to conceal the length of the show by putting all of the girls in batches of 5 or 6. I don't even remember how many they did during the preliminary gown competition. And boy, did it backfire. I mean, the fans were not happy. People were yelling, pasarela, pasarela, pasarela. Everyone was just waiting for the girls to show on stage what they were doing. I understand why the organization tried to put them all together just to kind of cut on the time, but that was such a bad decision. I don't know who advised to do this, because evening gown is the core of Miss Universe. It's part of the elegance. It's part of the show. It just adds so much emotion and intensity to every single one of the competitions that we get to see the girls in evening gown, that to me, it would have made more sense to have the national costume competition as a separate show rather than cutting on the swimsuit round or the evening gown competition. I mean, the girls trained for so long for this moment. The designers worked so hard for this particular moment as well, just to showcase the best that the country has to offer in terms of beauty, craftsmanship, just creative ideas from all over the world in terms of fashion and the potential of the designers. So it was indeed a little bit disrespectful to the girls and the designers, and just not the best experience for someone who was watching it live. Now, as I was telling you, the preliminary competition felt extremely long in my opinion, to the point that I was falling asleep at the venue. The final competition wasn't necessarily the same experience. I felt like the finals were a lot faster. The pace of the show was actually nice, but you could feel the rush, that there was almost no time and they just wanted to get through the show. I would say within 15 minutes of the beginning of the show, we already had a top 30. 20 minutes after that, we already had the swimsuit round, and we are cut into a top 12. From the top 12, we are going already into the top 5. And the whole thing just felt a little bit weird. As a fan, I really didn't experience that euphoria, that feeling of joy and excitement that I felt when I was in El Salvador last year. I just felt like, you know what, we have a show to do, we have to get through it, and we have a lot of candidates, and you know, we just have to get done with it. So as far as production is concerned, I feel like this new team at Miss Universe, and we have to say that it's a new team because the people that were working with Miss Universe last year, they're simply not there anymore. It's like they tried their best, but truthfully, they were kind of blindsided by the whole thing. And the Miss Universe organization just overpromised in terms of what we could expect realistically from the fans' perspective, you know? This was not a bad show by any means. I mean, you still compare it to most international competitions and it still holds its spot within the realm of pageantry, but by no means this was the show that we were expecting from a pageant held in Mexico. I'm going to continue my analysis with the format of the show, which is also one of the points that a lot of people were asking me to address. The whole cut going from the top 30, top 12, top 5, and then announcing the winners. To be honest, realistically, I don't really have a major problem with it, because just like as I told you during finals, they were pretty effective at keeping the show within a certain time frame and cutting through the entire batches of girls in a way that it was dynamic. I mean, if you remember, the top 30 was announced in 3 batches of 10. So the stage wasn't overly crowded and every girl got a little bit of the spotlight during that particular time. So lucky for them if they were able to make the top 30. I don't necessarily feel the same thing in terms of the whole batch. Now, let me tell you, I know that Miss Universe broke records this year by having 130 delegates. Initially, when they first started, they ended up with 125, and this is something huge. But I'm gonna say, I mean, from the perspective of a fan, it's just a little bit too much. It's hard to keep up with so many girls. It's hard to get to know all of them. It's hard to support all of them. You know, a lot of people, especially for us content creators, they expect us to like support equally. How can I support 130 delegates when I can barely get through their profiles? You know, it's just way too much information. And on top of that, there are so many other pageants happening simultaneously, so our attention is divided and we just don't realistically have the time to get to know and support so many people. That was my feeling of Miss Universe, and I feel like towards the end I just ended up picking the ones that I thought had the most potential, and I will just continuously talk about them because that's what I can do from my side, you know, highlight those that I see have the potential to win the crown. And for those that I see that, have the potential but are not being highlighted, the dark horses, I also had an episode about them. So I really try my best, but I cannot help but to feel that I kind of fell short in terms of like giving everyone an equal chance, because realistically it's just too much. This is not just a problem for the pageant fans and the people who cover the pageants, but it's also a problem for the candidates. I mean, imagine you winning a national title and then you go to Miss Universe, this is the dream of your life, and then it turns out that, well, you are simply not being highlighted. And I'm gonna tell you, I know firsthand because I heard this from the team members of Miss Universe. There are Excel sheets where they have all of the delegates, and they have every single time that they have been highlighted in different activities, in different photo shoots, in different videos, whatever it is. They try as much as they can to highlight every single contestant equally. But the reality of it is that because there are so many, even though you are highlighting them equally, that could mean that they were featured on the page like once or twice or thrice. That's not necessarily what you hope for when you join Miss Universe, and that is not necessarily what you as a fan also expect. Now, I know that you want me to get into the top 30, 12, and 5 and give you my opinion on that, but before, I just want to take a moment to talk about the activities and the overall experience for the girls. It was not great, and there are a lot of things to consider in this particular aspect. I mean, as I told you in the very beginning, Miss Universe in Mexico, Mexico is one of those countries that had so much to offer in terms of history, food, people, places to see, just you name it. There's just like a lot to see. Last year, we were told that Miss Universe would actually go to different cities in Mexico and they will move around the country in order to give an overall perspective of what the country was. Unfortunately, that was not the reality of the show. The girls barely had any activities. Actually, the girls barely left the hotel. Only a handful of them were lucky enough to go to different cities. And for every single one of those activities, there were only a couple of girls that were selected. I'm talking about 8 to 12 contestants at a time, which means that for the vast majority of contestants, they never actually left the hotel to go for activities. I know firsthand because I was in touch with some of the delegates within Miss Universe that it was a little bit difficult for them because they couldn't leave their rooms, they couldn't have room service, there were so many restrictions. A lot of the girls have commitments of photos and outfits that they need to post for the designers, national organization, contracts and deals that they need to honor. But realistically, there were no activities for them to wear those things. So a lot of the girls were simply wearing their best looks in order to go down for breakfast, or just to go to the lobby to meet with the media that is waiting there, or simply just wearing it to take photos on the hallway. I mean, that's a little bit sad. You know what? No, actually, that's very sad because so many girls dream of this moment to showcase what they have and have such a large platform as Miss Universe is, but then the edition not living up to the expectation is just heartbreaking. I have no confirmation about this, but there were rumors about certain threats that were being made towards the Miss Universe organization and towards Raul more specifically regarding the safety of the girls if they were to leave the hotel, moments where they could be a little bit more vulnerable. So the rumors say that this was one of the main reasons why the girls barely left the hotel, so that it was kind of a safety concern, which I can understand, and honestly, safety always comes first. Security is so important. So I wouldn't judge, bash, or criticize the Miss Universe organization if that was really the reason and why they couldn't take the girls out. It is also a known thing that Mexico has its own share of problems in terms of cartels, all of this sort of mafias. So there is a silver lining. Although I do think that the experience absolutely underwhelming for the contestants, I can also understand if all of this happened because of security concerns. For this part, we have to take it with a grain of salt and just kind of assume that the organization was acting with the girls' best interest in mind. Earlier, I told you about the media. And I would like to share on that because I was part of the media. I was someone who went there to cover Miss Universe. And I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I've been traveling a lot for the past couple of months. I was just in Nepal, then I went to Albania, then I came back to the Philippines for literally a week. I flew to South Africa. Then from South Africa, it took me 2 days just to get to Mexico. Girl, by the time that I got to Mexico, I was exhausted. Like humanly, physically, mentally, exhausted, burnt out. So already before I even arrived at Miss Universe, my intention to cover the pageant were very different from what I did last year. If you remember last year, I had one-on-one interviews with the contestants, daily vlogs. I was posting on my Instagram, on my Facebook, on my YouTube. I was keeping everyone as updated as I possibly could. In all honesty, this year I went with a little bit more of audience expectation, and just like, I just wanted to witness the whole thing and live the experience without necessarily killing myself trying to cover for all of the pageant activities. Well, I'm very happy that I went with that mindset, because the moment that I got there, I understood very, very quickly that the media was not a priority. The media was not seen as a tool or as an asset, but rather almost like an inconvenience. I mean, we were given press passes, but we barely had access to anything. There was one event that we could attend, which was the revealing of the crown, but there were around 300 members of the media, and only 50 of them were allowed to attend in person. I didn't get an email, and a lot of the media were going there without invitation, but I was not about to set myself up for all of that, so I simply didn't go. The media pass did not give us access to any of the shows, whether it is prelims or finals, and as you guys know, those tickets were worth thousands of dollars. I ended up having access to the show through one of the organizations that I worked with all throughout the year, but I found it a little bit disheartening because there's so many people who traveled to cover Miss Universe, to bring visibility to Miss Universe, to talk about Miss Universe, and for them to not even be given a seat at the table. My God, I mean, and some of these medias are not big, or they're not even monetizing their platforms. So it is very hard for them, I will say borderline impossible, to even recover the investment. They're paying already for the transportation to go to Mexico, their hotels, their food. The least they can get is an assigned area where they can cover the competition. That's precisely why they went there. I understand the value of traditional media, television, radio, newspapers, you name it. I know that Miss Universe is all about those things, but those medias don't keep Miss Universe alive all throughout the year. Granted, they might give you a channel for your finals and your prelims. They might cover whoever wins the competition. They might give you a spotlight during a point during the pageant. But the ones who keep the pageant alive and relevant all throughout the year, especially while the queen is traveling left and right, it's the pageant media. It's the Facebook pages, it's the Instagram pages, it's the TikTokers, it's the YouTube channels. And for us to be treated as second-class citizens almost, I mean, it just didn't sit right with me. This just added to my feeling of, I'm just here to witness the pageant, I'm just here to watch the show. Honestly, I didn't bother, not even once, to wake up early and go to the lobby of the hotel to try to see the girls or interview the girls. Nothing, because I already understood the feeling towards us. Why would I put myself in a position where I'm going to be humiliated, where I'm going to be belittled, where I'm going to be treated as if I'm less than other media members just for the sake of coverage? Honestly, I didn't need that. I could very well make videos from the comfort of my hotel room, and I did, and I'm so happy with my coverage this year of Miss Universe, because I got to talk about all the topics that I wanted to touch on, and I didn't need to put myself in a position for them to look at me as if they were doing me a favor. There was no favor being done, to be honest. They might not realize it now, but one day they will. Let's talk about the cuts. So starting with the top 30, of course, this was a very dramatic cut, right? So starting with the top 30, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I was overall okay with the top 30. The moment that they announced the girls, I was happy with the pace of it. I was happy with the names that made the cut. I didn't have any major issues with it. It was actually fun and dynamic. There were, however, a couple of girls who didn't make the top 30 that I was surprised, because not only I think that they deserve it, but simultaneously because they had been delivering in terms of the performance, the looks, and every single aspect. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes for them to not make it. Simply put, I am talking about Miss Colombia and Miss Honduras. I don't know if you guys would agree with me on that end, but if you do, please just let me know down below in the comment section. There were also a couple of surprises. I won't get into too many, but I know that for the most part, a lot of people were surprised for Miss Macau to make the top 30. I don't think she was a front runner by any means, but I did do a little bit of research behind the scenes with some of the girls and talking to them, and it seems like Miss Macau was actually a very nice contestant. She got along with everyone, she was always on time, she was on top of her things. So although initially you can be a little bit surprised, we cannot discredit the fact that she was putting in the work behind the scenes and that there are several sources that can confirm that. So, I mean, happy for her and congratulations, Miss Macau. Now, moving on to the top 12, this was a little bit more of a dramatic cut, and I know that a lot of people can relate because, truthfully speaking, I mean, we had 125 girls at Miss Universe. We already cut to a top 30, which is massive. And from that top 30, we cut more than half of them. We also need to talk about the fact that Miss Universe had such high caliber this year of the contestants. So of course, a lot of them were not gonna make it and it was gonna be a bloodbath, and truly it was. Let's get into some of the surprises going into the top 12. I was personally a little bit surprised by Miss Argentina. I was surprised by Miss Bolivia, Canada, and Russia. Not to belittle any of them, I actually thought, for example, Miss Argentina, I noticed her a couple of times from my time at Miss Universe, especially during the prelims when she came out with that beautiful purple gown. Miss Bolivia was a little bit under my radar, but I do acknowledge her beauty and her performance skills, so all props to her. I'm actually very happy for Canada. I've been talking about her for quite some time, and I've been telling you, you know, how she's a trailblazer in Canada and she's been making history for us. Truthfully, I thought that she was not going to be considered simply because of the such factor in our country, but ultimately very happy to see her there. And Miss Russia, one of my highlights during prelims, I just loved her performance and her look. She's also one of the youngest, if not the youngest, of the entire batch, and just super refreshing. I did not think she was gonna go all that far, but to see her there was a pleasant surprise. Now, some of the exclusions in the top 12, and this is gonna be a little bit more controversial. Let's talk about it, all right? So we had Miss Zimbabwe, who I was raging about for the longest time, and I just thought Miss Zimbabwe is, you know, I saw her already in the top 5. Well, I was surprised not to see her there. India, I talked about her extensively here on the channel. I knew for a fact she was going to be a top 30. I was very, very hopeful as well for a top 12. That didn't happen, unfortunately. Miss Finland, who for the longest time was considered to be one of the fan favorites and one of the crown contenders. I would expect her to make at least a second cut, but it was not the case. Miss Ecuador, my God, Mara, heavy favorite and heavy hitter. And, you know, overall, one of the crown contenders as well. I still don't understand up until this day. Miss Universe Cuba. Woo! My heart broke a little bit when she was not called. I mean, not only because I'm Cuban, but also because this was such an important milestone for our country. I'm still very proud that she was able to place in the top 30 after 57 years of absence. But I thought that with her performance and her looks, she deserved a little bit more than just the top 30. Of course, there are two very controversial ones, and that is, first of all, Miss Dominican Republic, who I spoke about extensively on my channel. I gave her her flowers when she deserved them, and I gave her a hard time when she deserved it, you know. But just being completely unbiased and just putting all cards on the table, I think that based on performance, Miss Dominican Republic deserved her spot in the top 12. What might have played against her is the rumors of the personality and the attitude and, you know, confirm certain behaviors that even I got to witness myself. But the point is, I was expecting her to be there in the top 30, so that was a little bit of a surprise. Of course, we have to talk about the exclusion of Miss Universe Philippines, Chelsea Manalo, who was also one of the girls that I was hoping to see in the top 12. There's been a lot of people asking me about Chelsea, her performance, what went right, what went wrong, and whatnot, and I promise you I will make a video about that. There's a big Filipino community here on my channel, so I think it's granted that I make a dedicated video for that. In my final predictions, I put Chelsea at number 8 on my list, so although I knew that there were some challenges that she needed to overcome, I was hopeful for at least a top 12 placement. So as far as the top 12 was concerned, those were my feelings about it. As far as the top 5 is concerned, one of the most balanced top 5s that we had in recent Miss Universe history. Some of the surprises going into the top 5 were Mexico, and I spoke about this on my last video, on my final predictions for Miss Universe, where I did put her at number 12 on the list. Truthfully, not because I felt like she had earned that spot, but because I knew that there's going to be some sort of politics involved in this and she will place at least within the top 12. I was not expecting her to go as far as top 5. And listen, no hate to the candidate. She's beautiful, both facially and physically. But I did think, though, that there were other contestants that were a little bit more prepared for the competition. I was a little bit surprised by Miss Nigeria making the top 5. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I was actually pleasantly surprised for her to make the top 5. Truthfully, I was betting a little bit more on Miss Zimbabwe to make the top 5, but I think that Chidi won her spot fair and square. I mean, with the whole story, the performance, the consistency all throughout the competition, I cannot in any way, shape, or form discredit what she did and the spot that she got. In terms of the exclusions and the girls that I was expecting for them to be there in the top 5 but didn't make it, well, I already mentioned about Zimbabwe. I was expecting Peru to be there, who during my final predictions was my #1 pick. She was my predicted winner for the whole competition. Unfortunately, she stayed within the top 12. Miss Universe Chile, who was also not only incredibly beautiful, a great performance, but was also arguably the most popular girl of the entire batch. Very surprised to not see her in the top 5. We had 2 different rounds of Q&A. During the first one, I felt like the best answer of the night went to Miss Universe Thailand. Opal just nailed it absolutely during that Q&A round. And I was taken by surprise when they announced that there was going to be a second Q&A round when they all get the same question. During that second round, to be honest, Opal's answer wasn't as strong, and I felt like the one who really stood out during this particular round was Miss Universe Nigeria. In both Q&A rounds, I feel like Miss Denmark stayed consistent. She didn't have the best answer of the night, in my opinion, but whether it was the first or the second question, she gave a consistent answer. And remember, I've told you that before, sometimes consistency is preferable than, being great once and then not so great a second time. Sometimes being somewhere in the middle can play in your favor. The answers of Miss Universe Mexico were meh. Both times, if I'm being honest, I was not gagging over it. Nigeria, she had an okay answer the first time. It was just, she answered the question basically. The second time, she made a true statement, very powerful, which I think is ultimately what pushed her to the first runner-up position. Miss Universe Venezuela, we all saw what happened with the translator, and we just attest that sometimes you need to prepare a little bit more when it comes to the language skills. And even though you can request a translator and there might be some external help, you cannot always trust them blindly because you are only as good as your translator. And look, I'm not about to bet all of my preparation and my pageant experience on someone that I just met. Let's talk about the winner, our new Miss Universe from Denmark, Victoria Kjær Delving. I hope I'm pronouncing that well. Honestly, I'm not used to the name just yet, so if I'm wrong, please go ahead and correct me. Look, I think that overall she is extremely beautiful. One of the most beautiful girls of the entire batch, and for quite some time now, she has been predicted to be the winner. In my final prediction, she was within my top 3, so I saw the potential and I felt like she could get it. Although Denmark doesn't have that sash factor, it's been a while since Miss Universe crowned a girl from Europe, especially a girl that looks like her. And from the things that I heard, Miss Universe is heavily pushing this year their skincare brands, their cosmetic brands, their derived products. So I think that she will be a good ambassador and spokesperson for all of that. Like her image, she does have a commercial image that could be profitable for the organization if they know how to market her well. So overall, when I think of Miss Universe 2024 in Mexico, I will say that it was a little bit of a missed opportunity. In terms of showcasing the culture of the country, doing more activities, giving a better experience to the girls, to the media, to everyone who was involved in the competition. I hope that this is a learning lesson for the management, for the new team members that were just figuring it out as they go, because as a Miss Universe fan, my goal is never to sit here and just simply bash the organization. If anything, I want them to improve, to grow, to do better so that they can have a better experience and we can have a better experience. It is a win-win situation, At the end of the day, the good part of Miss Universe 2024 and the positive experience, I feel like that we do have a beautiful winner. I have to acknowledge that. We have a very deserving winner. We had one of the most balanced top 5s in recent history. And well, that's about it. Let me know how do you guys feel about Miss Universe 2024 in the comment section down below. I know that some of my comments might be harsh. Some of them I'm trying to be more reasonable and give them, some props where props are due and just a little bit of grace. This was the first edition for the Raul and JKN combining their organization and just working together. So, let's give it a little bit of grace, but my expectation is really, really high for next year. By the way, we have no news about who will be the host country for the upcoming editions, so only time will tell. In the meantime, you go down below, let me know how do you feel about my comments, my feedback, and everything that I talked about on this video, and I will be reading you and replying to as many of you as I possibly can. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.